to solve this inequality. And notice that what was in front, this has nothing to do with the domain. It affects the graph, but not the domain. So what would be your first step to solve this inequality? Add 4. So when I add the 4, I have negative 3x is greater than or equal to 4. All right, now what? Divide by negative 3. What happens when you divide an inequality by a negative? Flip. So you're going to get x is less than or equal to negative 4/3. So it's less than, which means it's coming from the left, ending at negative 4/3. This is the way you have to write your answer on the test next week, or quiz. Next week is a quiz. Any questions? All right, let's go ahead and factor. When you're talking about the domain, again, it's your denominator. And the denominator happens to be a quadratic. So in order to solve it, we have to factor it. So I need two numbers that would multiply to be negative 4, but add to a positive 3. Positive 4, negative 1. All right. So when you set those equal to 0, you get x minus 1, you get x equals 1, and then the x plus 4, you get x equals negative 4. Which one of these numbers is smaller, 1 or negative 4? So I'm going to put that furthest to the left, and then I have my 1. So when you're stating your domain, this is your first piece, this is the middle, and this is the end. It's like we're taking that line and breaking it into 3 pieces. So that would be negative infinity to negative 4 union, negative 4 to 1 union, 1 to infinity. And why didn't I use any brackets for the second one? Why didn't I use any brackets? Anybody know? Can you divide by 0? So that means it can't equal those numbers. You can take the square root of 0. You can take the square root of 0. I can use a hard bracket for a square root. But you cannot divide by 0. All right, so now we're going to start 2.2. So if you're titling your notes, homework for 2.1 is due tomorrow. Homework 7 is due Thursday. And it's graphs and the function. The graph of a function. That's what it's called. That's what 2.2 is called. 2.2 is the graph of a function. Homework 7, out of the book. Again, that information can also be found on Canvas. Any questions? And you don't need to copy this down because, again, this is on Canvas. I just did a copy and paste, or a snip, I should say. So go ahead and copy down that first clip art. If you need to write down this definition, you can, but it's the definition for a vertical line test. So you should have one of these as one of your images. Go ahead and glue that down. And we already talked about this in 2.1. So 2.2, this is an overlap. So looking at these 8 graphs, see if you can figure out which ones are functions. And you can just put yes and no. And then after you do that, go ahead and circle. There's 3 that would fail the vertical line test. So don't say it out loud, but see if you can figure out which 3 would fail the vertical line test. All right, who thinks you know what 3 would be a no? All right. What about in the first row? What do you think is a no? A, B, C, or D? D. What about in the bottom row? E, F, G, and H? E and H? F and G. All right. So my no, you can kind of see if you draw a vertical line through D, it crosses twice. That's why that's a no. The same thing for F, it's going to cross twice or more than once. In G, it actually crosses 3 times. So those are the 3 that would fail the vertical line test. Any questions? Pretty basic. Who remembers this from Algebra 1? This is going all the way back. Okay. Next. Go ahead and glue this one down. This is example 2. State the domain and range of each function. So when we're talking about domain, I want you to remember that domain, we're going to read it left to right. Because we always start with the smallest number. So when we look at, let me actually write that out because you probably won't know what that means. Domain. Because that's where the lowest numbers are on the x-axis is on the left. But for a range, for the range, we're going to read that bottom up or bottom to the top. Hold on. So that is how we're going to read our graph. So I'll give you a moment and then I'm going to show you with the meter stick how you should hold your pencil when you see this on the quiz next week. All right, we ready? Who needs more time? All right, so let's talk about domain. So let's talk about this graph first. Domain. Okay, I'm just going to put a D for domain. What happened to my little... So we're going to pretend like this is the pencil. So this is what you're going to do with your pencil. When you're trying to find the domain, you're going to hold it vertical first of all. You're going to start at the left, and you're going to go across. Notice how there's nothing on the graph over here. Okay, so when does the graph hit my ruler? What does X equal when the graph touches my ruler? 0. And then it's going to go off to an arrow. An arrow pointing right means what? Infinity. So that means that my domain starts at 0. And because that's a closed circle, bracket 0 to the right forever. That's how you're going to write your domain. All right, now let's talk about range. So now I'm going to hold my pencil horizontal. Nothing is down here for negative infinity. We don't have an arrow pointing down. It touches my ruler right here. What does Y equal right there? -1. Does everyone see that? And then it's going to go up. It hits an arrow. The arrow, though, is pointing up. So that means that it's starting at -1, and then it's going up to infinity. That would be your domain and range for that graph. All right, let's do the domain and range for the second one. All right, so domain right here. So it's asking you on the x-axis, do you see how this graph goes from here to here on the x-axis? So what is the first number? Where am I starting at? What number is that? -4 or +4? -4. Is it a bracket or a parentheses? And then it stops here. Or what does X equal right there? 5. Bracket or parentheses? Parentheses. Good, because that one's open. Now let's do our range. When I'm talking about range, though, now I'm going over to my x-axis. This is the part. So when I'm looking at my range, the lowest value is here. The highest value is there. So my range is -4. Now, is that one this -4 a bracket or a parentheses? Parentheses, because this is open. So my range starts open. So I'm going to put a parentheses on the -4. And then it's going to go up to here, which is what? Nobody can read a graph? We don't know how to read a graph? What's the number? 3. I need more than 2 people, y'all. We got another quiz next week now. I'm not mad at the last quiz. The average was in the 80s. But we still had quite a few that did not hit the mark, and I need more people to hit the mark. All right, now let's do domain for the last graph. So for our domain, this one is actually starting at an arrow. All right, and it's stopping here. So it's starting at an arrow, which means my domain, what do you think my domain? If you start with an arrow, what does that mean I'm starting with? Negative infinity, because that arrow is going towards the left. So my domain would be negative infinity, and it's stopping right here, which is 3. Now let's do our range. The range starts here, which is -1. But then when you look at it, this graph on the y-axis, the numbers are getting bigger. So on the range is going up. So that would be towards infinity. Yes, Abby? All right, if you're starting with a closed circle, that's parentheses. And this one is closed. This is open, so that's a parentheses. And at the top is closed, which is why that's a bracket. All right, any questions so far? So that's example 2. Now let's talk about example 3. All right, go ahead and copy this down. It's consider the function. And the function is f of x. And only copy down one question at a time. So only copy down part A. So copy down the function, copy down part A, and then we will answer the questions for this function. So we have f of x equals x plus 2 over x minus 6. And the first question we're going to ask, is the point 314 on the graph? Does anyone know how we would figure that out? We're simply going to substitute and see if it's true. So in place of x, I'm going to put a 3. And where my y value is, I'm going to put a 14 and solve it. So let's see. For part A, 14 equals 3 plus 2 divided by 3 minus 6. And what you need to figure out is this true? Is this a true statement? I'm going to put a question mark, because we have to figure that out. Is that true? So I know that 3 plus 2 is 5. And 3 minus 6 is -3. So what that's telling me is that 14 is 5 over -3. Is that true? Are these two sides equal to each other? So because they're not equal, the answer to part A is no. That point is not on the graph. All right, go ahead and copy down part B. Part B says if x is 4, what is y? Well, that's pretty easy to do. How are you going to answer part B? And by the way, I set this up to look just like homework 7. Homework 7, you're going to have a function and you're going to have to answer questions just like this. So for part B, how do you think we're going to go about answering that? If x is 4, what is y? What am I going to do with the 4, Denaya? Put the 4 in for x. So y equals, and go ahead and put your 4 in and see what you get for y. So for part B, we get f of x equals 6 over -2, which is -3. So for part B, f of x equals -3. which means that the point 4, -3 is on graph. That's what that means. Why did I put a C right there? That's not part C. This is part B. Sorry, y'all. All right, now let's look at part C. Part C, they give us Y, and they want us to find X. So Y equals 2. 2 equals, and it will be X plus 2 over X minus 6. Feel free to make this a proportion. Cross multiply and solve that for X. All right, I'll give you all a minute to solve that for X. No, leave him alone. Just leave him alone. No, I just like, he ain't been here for 2 weeks. Go ahead and distribute the 2. And then I'm going to let you all finish it. I'm going to freeze my screen. You all solve it. This is just a basic equation, Algebra 1. You all don't need my help for this. All right, who got 14? All right, good. A few more questions and we'll be done for today. Still same function though. So now let's look at D, E, and F. Part D says, what is the domain? So do we have a red light in this function? We do. So when you're trying to find your domain, this is what you're focusing on. Remember, it's the denominator. X minus 6 cannot equal 0, which means X cannot equal 6. Go ahead and write that in interval notation. How do you say all real numbers except positive 6? So, okay, who had that answer? Negative infinity to 6, union 6 to infinity, all parentheses. All right, how do you find the x-intercept? When you're trying to find the x-intercept, you set y equal to 0. So I'm going to make this 0. So for part E, 0 equals x plus 2 over x minus 6. 0 also has a denominator of 1. So you can write the number 0 over 1. And when you cross multiply, 0 times anything is going to give you 0. So this is going to be 0 times x minus 6 equals 1 times x plus 2. Well, that just simplifies to 0 equals x plus 2. So what do you get for x? Negative 2. And whenever you're asked for an x-intercept, you have to write that as an ordered pair, which most of you all did that. So on the test last week.
If you've added x plus or multiplied x plus 6 by both sides and tried to solve it.
Yep, you could also do that too. If you multiply x plus 6 on both sides, then it would still cancel out because x minus 6 times 0 will be 0. So, yeah. All right, last one, F. If you're trying to find the y-intercept, that means x equals 0. So y is going to equal 0 plus 2 over 0 minus 6. And write that as an ordered pair. And that will be a fraction. And you always reduce your fraction. All right, any questions about today's lesson? So you should have one more. I want you to glue that down. That's where we're going to start tomorrow. And we have a lot of questions on that graph. So I would probably go to a page that's pretty blank and glue that down for tomorrow. Because we have a lot that we're going to answer for that graph. So I'll give you a minute to glue that down. And then just copy down the first 4 parts. You don't need to leave any space between these first 4 questions. And we'll pick up here tomorrow.